Hey guys, welcome to Channel Surfing, the IGN TV podcast, catch-up edition, part 27. But there's a lot to talk about this week.
There is, because you were off gathering information like a hunter-gatherer of information.
Yeah, I mean,
television.
a lot of it was out there. Yeah, so I just got back. Well, we're recording this on a Monday, but I got back Friday from New York, and it was Upfronts week.
Yes.
And so that was, all the schedules were put out officially, and all the trailers were put out. So it's just
There was a lot to ingest.
There was a lot to ingest, and yeah, the schedules and kind of seeing what we'll talk about, some of the things, the choices they made about what will air where. So a lot to talk about on that front, although we will actually hold on that because there was another piece of news that broke Friday night, had nothing to do with Upfronts, but is important to us.
It was before we had had a bitter cup of coffee.
Yeah.
It's delicious again.
It is delicious again.
Hot and piping and just hickory. It's gorgeous.
It's back. David Lynch tweeted out that Twin Peaks back on, indicating he is back in.
Bam!
Yeah.
And so it's funny because we had done this other chat when he exited, and really went in depth with our theories on his psychology.
Right.
Why. And so do you think that ultimately, now that he's back and they've made the deal for more money per episode, that this really was a play for cash? Not for himself, but for the show.
Probably,
We really were like, I think he's scared. It's been so many years. It's so much to live up to. But no, he wanted more money because he's doing it now that he's got it.
I mean, but I should say, but we don't know. I mean, maybe, because again, the biggest thing we could go on was the head of Showtime's own speculation, which again was, when everything's out in the public, you're like, how much is this tactics on everyone's side? Because Lynch quit on Twitter without telling Showtime. And then Showtime, David Nevins does his interview, and he's like, I don't know if he, got cold feet. I don't know if this is a negotiating ploy. So yeah, who knows? I started to get hopeful. You start to read into everything, right? So the cast of Twin Peaks was being extremely vocal about wanting him back on social media.
Well, I truly think they, unless they were absolutely contractually obligated to do it, I don't think they would have done it without him.
No, and I actually don't think Showtime was going to either.
No,
yeah.
You cannot do that show without that creator. No way.
I think Showtime knew that too, and even though we hadn't, and that they weren't saying anything because they wanted it to work out. But if he would not come back, I think they would have just pulled the plug. They would have just said, sorry, we're not doing it.
Yeah, it's weird because even as you're talking, for a moment I went into the space where I could picture the future of it airing, and the first time we heard that theme music coming up, I'm getting chills thinking about this airing.
I know, I'm so excited. I'm so happy, relieved again, and so start to read into everything. And so the cast was being really vocal, and then Sherilyn Fenn, new to Twitter, Cheryl Lee, Madchen Amick, and I'm forgetting Kimmy Robertson, I think. 4 of the actresses in the show all tweeted pictures a couple weeks before this announcement that he was back of them having dinner with Lynch. And that, I'm just
what they were talking about.
And I was like, they're trying to convince him, or he's saying I'm coming back.
What if it was like an intervention?
Who knows?
David, you have to do this. Let's do it. We can all do it together. It's gonna be amazing.
If that's true, then good work, ladies. We don't know, but I'm just, I'm well aware that when they come back and do these things years later, it could totally not work, and we've had examples when it didn't. Just having been told it was coming back, knowing those 9 scripts were written, no matter what, they were already written. I need to see it, right? I
have to see it. There's no way. And it's interesting because we get so excited about these things. We were excited when Arrested came back. Is there any part of you that is a little worried?
Absolutely. I mean, I know. I mean, it's, realistically speaking, of course, it's so easy for this to be disappointed. And Arrested Development, ultimately, it wasn't awful, but there was issues with it, and it couldn't recapture what those 3 years of the show were. And it's really cooled everyone's excitement on more. You can sense that for sure, even though we're going to probably get more.
We are going to get more, but I think, the fan base is kind of like, I'll watch it.
Right. And that's sad. So, I'm well aware that Twin Peaks could not work, but I'm still too big a fan, and there's so many things that were left unanswered at the end of the show.
But there's so many things I don't need answered too. There's a lot that I'm fine that if they don't. Where do you stand on Fire Walk With Me? That may be a different discussion.
I won't go too hard down a rabbit hole because we have so much to talk about it, but I'm pro Fire Walk With Me. I actually really like it, and I know that's hugely polarizing.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll make that as a thing sometime. Actually, it brings me to a point. You guys, you have an assignment. If you haven't seen Twin Peaks, that's okay, no big deal. It's on Hulu, and you can watch it. You can watch it this weekend.
Is it not on Netflix too? Is it only?
I believe it's on Netflix too.
Okay.
I mean, there's options.
Yeah.
What I'm saying to you is there are options for you.
Yeah.
And you need to watch it, and you need to catch up. Catch up.
And I think it's only 29, somewhere around 30 episodes.
Yeah.
It's not a giant commitment.
You could really reasonably, with a little bit of coffee and some momentum and some will, you could get this done this weekend. You could check it off your list.
1 weekend is a lot, but you could do it.
You could do that.
And I do want to say, don't freaking watch the movie first. People just tweeted me, oh, I started with it's the movie. It's a prequel, right?
No,
don't do that.
No, that's a huge spoiler in the movie. You cannot watch the movie first. You have to watch the show first. Must, very, very important, watch the show first. Do watch the show, I mean, and then tweet IGN. Make damn fine cup of coffee show happen, because that's the show that I want Eric and I to do. Half-hour show each week.
Even if that doesn't happen, we'll talk plenty about it. And last thing I wanted to mention is, because I should say that we're getting more than 9 episodes. They weren't specific. They just said that, you know, when they put out their official little press release about him coming back, that he's back, he's directing it all still, and it's going to be more than 9 episodes. So.
You've seen the Portlandia Battlestar Galactica episode, right? Yeah. Make that your sub in Twin Peaks and make that your weekend.
Yeah. So do it. Moving on to, though, a sort of now a similar situation to where we were at with Twin Peaks a few weeks ago. Let's talk a little bit about the Harry Shearer Simpsons thing.
Okay.
Only because, again, it's like...
Have you healed? How do you...
Have I healed? Yeah. I mean, I'm even though I'm not one of those people like, oh, Simpsons awful now, cancel. It's like, I don't watch it regularly anymore. I don't think it's as good as it used to be. It is, at this point, it's just part of our life. It's just The Simpsons continues, you know?
It does. It's funny because I was on a set visit a couple of weeks ago, and there was like a big debate about whether today did The Simpsons or South Park hold up better. And it was a very polarized discussion amongst a bunch of TV critics. But yeah, I mean, either way, they're both just kind of like there. Yeah. You know, now South Park doesn't exist, or if Trey or Matt leave. Right. Period. But The Simpsons can go on. It'll just be different.
Yeah, and knowing that, I mean, Shearer, you know, obviously a huge part of the voice cast, voices so many of the, you know, beloved characters. So it's definitely a blow, him leaving. Right now, again, and this is one of those things that could also change very quickly or not. We don't know what exactly is going on, because he announced he's leaving via Twitter, just like David Lynch did with Twin Peaks before he came back. But his statement was kind of weird about how they're not letting me do all the opportunities I'd want to do. And then Al Jean gave a very candid interview to Hollywood Reporter saying, I don't know what he's talking about. Like, we've never stopped him or any of the cast from doing other roles. Yeah. He lives in, I think, England or somewhere overseas, and he records via phone. And then he got pretty specific, and I think it was kind of because he's pissed, and I understand. He's like, he makes $7 million a year, so he has we were trying to get him to re-sign for $14 million for a 2-year contract to do a little work via phone each week, and was free to do other things. So I don't know what he's like, literally, because they're like, well, do you think you can work it out to give him what he wants? He's like, I don't know what he wants, you know?
So what do you think it's all about? Let's speculate.
Let's speculate. You know, it's hard to say, because even in our comments, it was interesting to see the people debate, because people were like, hey, maybe there were people who were going to the extreme. Maybe he realized the show sucks now and he wants to go. And there are people saying, hey, maybe he's just burnt out and like, I've done these characters enough. Yeah. All of which is valid, but is weird for him not to just go to them and say that, you know?
Yeah, and that's what you think that his announcement would be like, look, I have absolutely loved this experience. I'm so grateful for it. It's changed my life. I love The Simpsons. I've just done this so long now. I'm an actor. I just feel like I have to move on to other things. Yeah. Which you would understand. That is a long, long, long time to be playing the same character.
Completely, yeah. Even if it's not that much work, it's still like at a certain point, oh, I'm doing Mr. Burns grumpy again. You know, it's like...
I'm sure you do get burnt out on it.
Yeah.
You know?
But it is strange because, again, because Gene it was one of the more interesting interviews, and because he was just not holding back. He's like, look, and the one thing is everyone gets paid the same amount. And the one thing we're not going to do is give him more money. But we don't even know if that's what he wants. But if he was like, well, actually what I want is $15 million a year or whatever, and everyone else gets 14, it's like, that's not happening. Yeah. But I'm like, why would he need that? I mean, he's very rich already, and this is an amazing deal. So it is like, why would he?
Can you imagine? I just want us all to pause and have a nice moment for ourselves, where if we imagine that we get paid $7 million a year to get on the phone a couple times a week.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
Feels good.
I would accept that offer. I would definitely accept that offer.
Like, you know? I think it's been a long time since you had another job, buddy, because it doesn't quite work that way.
Yeah. So it's very odd, and Shearer hasn't done, and eventually someone will get an interview with him, you know, because all he did was those tweets, and then he does like a thank you for your support tweet, but he hasn't really sat down with anyone to say, here's the deal.
And maybe maybe there really is a reason that if we don't have to understand it, he can do what he wants. He can quit his job. He has free will. But I feel like even if he did just say, look, I was just burnt out. Right. You know, like I just can't do it anymore. I would understand that. You know?
I think people would definitely understand that.
You don't have to because you got paid $7 million a year to get
But on the other hand, what if you took the $7 million a year? Yeah, it's a very strange situation. Like the more we kind of learned about it last week, and I who knows, tomorrow they could say, oh, we worked it out, but for now it's weird.
I really don't want to belabor this, but I do want to say that if even for 3 years I got paid that to get on the phone a couple of times a week, I would retire forever.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Why work at all?
Yeah, it's like 21 million. All right, there's I could be wise with my money, you know.
I can invest.
Harry, let's
diversify my currency. Come on, Harry.
Think it could work out. All right, so let's
do a little Mr. Burns.
Yeah, I'll do a bad Mr. Burns, but I'll do it for $7 million. Let's shift now. Let's go into Upfront's world now, or at least let's talk about the things that were announced.
Do you feel traumatized? Do you feel as exhausted as after a con or a TCAs?
Yeah, because it's not quite that intensity. It's not Upfront is not the just all like there's no break in your schedule and you were just moving, but it's a long week. It's a full week, and it's long days, and there's a couple days that are longer than others. Like Monday they start with kind of the toughest day because Monday is both Fox and NBC's Upfront, and so it just started very early in the morning. I was on a press line at 8:30 in the morning, and I was done on a press line at 10:30 at night, and other stuff in between. So it's very exhausting, and you're not getting a lot of sleep with both the jet lag and the there's stuff to
and the partying and the drinking
and the partying, the drinking. Yeah, well, there was the Miley Cyrus. We should talk about that at some point.
I heard about this. This is amazing. Yes, pin in that. Okay.
Now I'll tell it right now, which is Adult Swim Upfronts. I know I've talked about this before, but it's like they're weird events because they're aimed at advertisers. That's the most important thing, and we'll talk more about this in a minute with the trailers. It's all aimed at selling these shows to advertisers and for the networks to claim, hey, look at our new lineup. It's all going to be hits. You know, everything's going to be a hit. Buy ads with these shows because we're going to be big hits. So all the presentations themselves are the executives coming out. It's an audience of suit and ties, people who've flown in from across the country who work for different advertising companies. And you get the heads of the network coming out to give you stats and in 18 to 49 and this, and we're rising in this. And
do you think that ever lands for anybody? I mean, honestly, I really think that every single person that both delivers and receives stats just glazes over.
I mean, they've learned their lesson. A couple times they went so far down the rabbit hole that the audience was audibly groaning at a certain point. Like there was one year that Fox did like 15 minutes of stats and charts like straight, and everyone started to like super zone out.
And you can really get granular with the stats. I mean, you can be like, 14 to 16-year-olds who are boys and also like toys.
Right, and which is what they're doing because since the general audience, it is, since the general audience for TV has dissipated and there's no denying that your overnight ratings are lower, they start to get that. They start to be like, but in this thing, we're really
niche.
Right, we're rising. Yeah, so those are what most of the presentations are, but Adult Swim in the middle of the week every year, Wednesday night, does we're Adult Swim, we can have fun with this, and so their Upfront is at night at 9 p.m., and it's just a party at a bar.
Really?
Yeah, and instead of having any execs come out,
I bet they sell more.
They just have some stats come on screen, but in like a kooky, funny Adult Swim way, and then they bring out a giant musical artist to perform. But this year was weird because when you just look at the history of who they'd had, where they went this year, because the last 4 years have been MIA, Jay-Z, Kanye, Outkast, and then this year was Miley Cyrus. So,
I think they were just hoping she'd do something nuts.
I mean, she came out topless with painted boobs and butterfly wings strapped to her back. Classic Miley.
Did she really?
She did. You should see some pictures, like some Vulture, there was some people who had like professional photographers there of her. She had like 2 people come out in a horse costume and she danced with them. As you do.
As you do.
Yeah.
As you do. Yeah. I don't hate on Miley. I think people hate on her.
It was quite entertaining. Trust me. I was like.
I mean, I am entertained by the image of that.
I would not be paying to go see a Miley Cyrus concert, but.
But that moment worked.
Right. That moment worked for me. It was very entertaining. But let's get to the shows. Let's start with the stuff in our wheelhouse. Not shockingly, it's the comic book shows. Let's talk about Supergirl. Because it got picked up as we expected. It was a almost slam dunk to get picked up.
They put such a ton of focus on that show.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we were talking about this in the office. Like, they are putting a ton of focus on Supergirl. Why am I Southern all of a sudden?
Y'all? You've been watching Friday Night Lights, you said.
Because I've been watching Friday Night Lights. Well, and I was born in the South. Okay, let's move on from that. But it's interesting because a show that's like a really big hit for one network would be a huge failure for CBS. And there's no guarantee that Supergirl is going to be, for CBS, a hit.
Yeah, that's the biggest question, right? I was actually responding to someone in our comments today who was like, said something like, no one's going to watch this, it'll be canceled in 6 weeks. I said, look, I think the minute this show premieres, it's the most watched superhero show on TV.
Yeah.
But that also doesn't mean it's a hit by CBS's standards. Because when you look at all the ratings of the comic book shows these days, Gotham, S.H.I.E.L.D., Flash, Arrow, none of them are a hit by CBS's standards.
Not at all. Yeah. Not at all. And because they are a hit by these other networks.
By these other networks, or by the specific kind of show. Like even with S.H.I.E.L.D., it's like, well, it's doing better than anything had done in that time slot for ABC in a long time.
And they have the corporate synergy. There's so many reasons why S.H.I.E.L.D. is going to stay, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because for CBS, you're talking about the Big Bang Theory. They want numbers, you know, like big numbers that I think it's going to be really hard for any superhero show to actually get.
Yeah, and so let's talk. Let's have this discussion about what our first impressions of Supergirl, which are only based on the trailer right now. But again, keep in mind this is the upfronts trailer, and you know every year I understand why people are like, why are these trailers so freaking long, and why are they giving away clearly almost the entire pilot? Because they are not designed for the general audience. They just now they release them. They used to not. They are designed for a room full of advertisers who they want to show them the overview of the show and be like, see, doesn't this have all the elements that you want to advertise with? Doesn't this hit all the quadrants and like all the all the things?
Don't know, I think everybody does know about the quadrants. But that's, you know, like the age demographics, male and female, family, so kids. So basically you want like the whole family. You want like boys and girls and men and women. Those are the four quadrants, breaking it down pretty simply. So you want it to appeal to everyone, which, let us face, very few things on this planet do. And apparently Big Bang Theory does.
But also this day and age they do even less so, because when there were 3 networks and there wasn't the internet,
and all
it was
the
much more. Yeah, it was much more likely that you could get the entire family to watch The Dukes of Hazzard or something like that,
or The Cosby Show, or any number of shows. Like now, you have your periodic hits, and they're not even like there's the Big Bang Theory, so that's like a sitcom, sure, but then and the procedural shows, you can say S's, but then you've got like The Walking Dead, you know, which are like, that's an insane show to be as big as a hit as it is, which we've talked about a lot. But generally speaking, there's too much competition, because not only do you have available to you all of the different channels, but now you have streaming shows and backlogs of shows.
Oh yeah.
Which is how you end up going on a Friday Night Lights rabbit hole.
Exactly, which is great. But so you know, of course, you can never redo your first impression. So all that being said, you know, what was your first impression of the Supergirl trailer?
Okay, I did not love it. I will say that.
You're not alone in that.
I want to like it. Like I desperately want to be into this. We talked about this, and I was like excited.
Yeah.
I want to be into it, but I gotta say that the minute somebody was like, "This is a lot like the Black Widow." Did you see the Black Widow SNL sketch?
I thought it was hysterical.
Hilarious. It really was a lot like it. I mean, those opening moments felt to me like lifted right out of The Devil Wears Prada, which, by the way, is not a bad movie. No. I like The Devil Wears Prada quite a bit, but it felt like they were checking boxes to me.
Right.
It felt like they were trying to mindfully
be everything to
everyone and reach those quadrants. So it didn't feel like a organic synergy, like a creative piece of material that was heartfelt. you know, that somebody created because this was really the story they wanted to tell, and this is really the way they wanted to tell it. It felt so corporately mandated to me. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if
I do know what you mean. And look, I mean, at the upfronts, I went to the press breakfast where they first announced the schedule. It's like a smaller thing and one of the few things that are very press specific. And Nina Tassler, you know, head of CBS, specifically said, and her boss, played by Calista Flockhart, is very Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah.
Like they want that. They want the people, advertisers especially, to think of that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, but that is a concern when you're trying to be everything to everyone. I totally get the SNL sketch thing, and I see it. You know, of course I see it. I do think it kind of
Marvel knows girls. I know it's DC. DC knows girls in this case.
But also it's like, you know, but I will say there's more to it than that, because the joke with the Black Widow trailer is like Black Widow finally gets her movie, and then that's all it is like a romantic comedy. Yeah.
My favorite part of it that Caleb and I keep talking about, which is not a name that you know, but whatever, is the "I'm so sorry," like the fire apology, Ultron's fire apology. Getting back to Supergirl.
Yeah.
I guess like the superhero pieces of it, Joshua Yale, our comics editor, really enjoyed those.
Yeah, me too.
And I enjoyed those too, but I will say that the beats between her personality, her human personality, and her superhero personality were exactly Superman and Clark Kent, which I was like, well, you don't need to ape your cousin. You know? Like I didn't. It was like you have the same friend in James. Olsen.
Sexy Jimmy Olsen.
He's attractive.
Yes.
Okay. I liked that. I'm not talking about the portrayal of the character. I'm just saying the man is cute.
Yeah.
But yeah, like to me, that was another thing that I was a little thrown off by that, because I was like, why is she doing why are they doing those beats? Why are they making her into Clark Kent? Yeah,
I mean, we talked already how they clearly want to evoke Superman as much as possible, including bringing over members of the supporting cast. Yeah, the plane. But that being said, I did like that, and where it's not the SNL sketches, like it goes big on the superhero stuff. I mean, she is like, you know, stopping a truck. She's fighting aliens. We kind of get the idea that that's going to be the main thrust, is her stopping these alien threats. That will be the source of the villain of the week a lot. So all that stuff like looked really fun to me. And I guess I'm more open to it. Yeah, it is aping the Clark dynamic. It's also kind of aping Peter Parker a lot, you know, as far as like, you know, who she seems to be, and like dorky and self-doubt and all that stuff. I think I'm not.
But she doesn't seem that way when she's Supergirl.
Right. But that's Spider-Man too. It's like the confidence comes
out.
With the other identity. So I'm more optimistic. I feel like than some people, but I also get it. And we haven't seen the full pilot, but I have a feeling it's going to be one of those pilots that is clunky and is trying to be everything to everyone and present every possibility of where this show could go.
But maybe it'll smooth out after that.
That's my hope. I mean, again, it's funny. You know, reminding some of our readers, like, you know, because you see in the comments, people are like, Supergirl needs to take a lesson from The Flash. I'm like, well, they can talk to themselves, since it's Greg Berlanti and Andrew Kreisberg, you know, the same people making it, literally. But they are serving different masters. They are serving CBS, and they are trying to be a much bigger show than The Flash, because it has to survive.
And CBS has different needs and different demands. It's absolutely true. And they have a little more freedom over at CW, I would imagine, than they do creatively at CBS, where I think it's probably a lot of network executives, I can't speak, mandating things to them. I do want to touch on really quickly, because I did briefly and jokingly talk about James Olsen. Thank you very much. Not Jimmy. But what do you think about that? I mean, we've known about that for some time, but here you sort of got to see him in action. And what do you think about the depiction?
You know, it's still jarring to me. Just, you know, like we talked about, like I could care less about the race change, which isn't important to the character at all. But the fact that he is like big, like hunky Jimmy Olsen is just weird, because that's not who the character had ever been. I like the idea of him being the conduit to the world of Superman, because we're not going to get Clark showing up, or at least not yet. But he's the guy who's seen it all and can kind of like be that, you know, conduit, and literally gives her a present and message from her cousin. So I think that works, and it is funny, since Jimmy Olsen was a character.
Why can her cousin not just contact her? I mean, that's a little bit.
Helen Slater had to deal with the same question when Jimmy Olsen showed up in her movie too.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
Probably best not to bring up that movie.
This is a tradition.
It's a recurring theme. But so Joshua and I have a little theme on James. We think he was Jimmy. Well, I don't know if we actually verbally said this to each other, but I'm going to assume he agrees with me, that he was Jimmy and like was maybe awkward and a little dorky, but that he kind of had like grew up, you know?
This is him, yeah,
and
like maturing.
This is him maturing, and this is him, maybe he's gained some confidence. He's been through some stuff with Superman, and like this is the adult, and maybe he's trying on this persona, and that's why he's like, it's James, please, I'm James now. You know?
I think that sounds very credible, because I could totally see, because they're putting him in a mentor role more.
Yeah. He
could be like, you should have seen me, you know, when I first met your cousin.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially since she is so awkward and uncomfortable, that he can be somebody that has had that experience himself and sort of come through it and gain some confidence. And I think the other thing too is just structurally on a show, if you have two characters that are sort of having that same struggle, unless you are like a show that's about characters that are outliers, then there's an imbalance. You want to have it like her quirkiness is illustrated and made funny by being set against somebody who's very cool. Do you know what I mean? I'm just talking like comedy beats. I think that's what their thinking was. But I certainly understand people being like, well, then call him something else. Don't have him be Jimmy Olsen.
Yeah, it's
which I understand.
Yeah, it's gonna take some adjusting, but yeah, I guess we'll hopefully we'll be seeing the Supergirl pilot soon, and we'll have some thoughts on it. But yeah, I guess I'm trying to be more optimistic. But I watched the trailer again because the first time I was like, I don't know. Those first 2 minutes especially, because they go they hit it so hard with the Devil Wears Prada-ish, romantic comedy-ish stuff. But I have a feeling there is a lot more to the show than that, and I do think once they kind of do that setup, they'll be able to find what the show really is. You know?
I hope so. Yeah. I really hope so.
Yeah. So we shall see.
I want to like it.
Let's quickly talk about the other new DC. Oh, there's more, but we'll talk about the other DC superhero show, Legends of Tomorrow. Which had a trailer, but we should mention was a very different trailer because it was shot as a trailer. It was basically a proof of concept trailer rather than, they didn't shoot a full pilot for the show yet. But I thought was very fun and did its job as far as explaining what the show will be.
I thought it was very fun and did a job. I mean, it very pointedly was like, these are the characters, and they're going to be a team.
This is the stakes.
These are the stakes. This is how they would look if they were fighting together.
Right.
But what I will be upset about is if when we do get the pilot, there is no giant robot. You promised me.
You teased a giant robot.
A giant robot, and I want a giant robot.
Yeah.
That's where they screwed up, because they teased a giant robot, and if they can't deliver, I'm going to be upset.
I think they're going to get a giant robot. I feel like...
I better get a giant robot.
I mean, again, they showed the advertisers the giant robot. So
and now they want one, too.
Who wouldn't want a giant robot? Yeah. So I think it looked really fun, and it was cool. It was interesting because we got the reveal on White Canary, which had been rumored about.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what we assumed, right? Forever. Like, I feel like that was what I was assuming, that it was... The explanation was ultimately going to be in the Lazarus Pit.
Lazarus Pit.
I'm going to ask you this.
Yeah.
This is something that Joshua and I had said. I thought Sarah was like in the grave for months.
I believe so, yeah.
So what we thought maybe happened was that they time traveled back and got her as she fell and then took her to the pits and revived her. But why not just stop the murder, unless that would have caused a whole butterfly effect?
I think that's going to be it. I think that's exactly it. I think
because she had to become speedy. Because oh my gosh, Thea, hello. Thea had to become speedy.
Well, just everything had to happen. Like, it's like that. Like, no, we couldn't change all of that. Had to let her die. But then afterwards, after they think she's dead, then we can go and do this.
Who's in the grave?
No one. Maybe they let her be buried, but they dig her up immediately.
I don't know.
Maybe, because here's the other thing we should say about Legends of Tomorrow. It's mid-season. It's not debuting until 2016. And I think we're going to see a ton of setup on Arrow and the Flash in the fall.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like, we'll see Captain Cold and Heatwave on the Flash still, and then we'll see them leave. And so I think Arrow, they might even do someone dug up Sarah's grave or something that will lead into that, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, her whole family is still on Arrow.
Maybe it's a hologram.
Yeah, a hologram, yeah.
A whole new twist.
It is really funny.
They have future tech now. It could be a hologram.
They have future tech. And it's crazy to see, having begun with Arrow, which began as, trying to be pretty grounded and realistic within the confines of what was happening. But, no one had powers at first.
Yeah.
It was taking the sort of Nolan idea of, everything, how could this really work? And then they introduced the Flash into that world, which was already like, oh, that'll be crazy. And now they've fully embraced that.
Oh, no. Yeah, they're like, we're going crazy. We're going to do whatever we want. Dead is alive, alive, dead.
And now a show that's centered around time travel.
So here's the thing, the White Canary, okay, and don't they have Static in the comics, White Canary and Black Canary? Do they have some beef? Am I wrong?
But White Canary, so I don't know as much as I should about this topic, so I don't want to get too far because I'll be wrong. But White Canary is not, Sarah doesn't exist in the comics.
Well, not Sarah, but I thought there was a White Canary.
There is a White Canary, but it's a different character.
But it's a different character, but they're just kind of co-opting the name.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm tapping my nose. Very important.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of into it. I think it's fun. Because to me, honestly, like, I like the fact that they built up to this point and they kind of earned the right to go bat insane at this point and do whatever they want and have giant robots. But once you do get to the point that you can have giant robots and like people from coming back to life, I love it. You know, I can't help but love like the endless possibilities for kind of anything is possible, you know?
Doctor Who fan that you are.
I just completely repeated myself.
Doctor Who fan that you are, Arthur Darvill, excited?
Oh my God.
That'd be a yes.
Can we talk about how amazing he was even in just those few moments? First of all, Rory is such a different character. So Rory is like so awkward and he's so sweet and but this guy, he really does have like that roguish Han Solo feel to him. And I think he's already such an amazing addition in just this, don't you judge me, in just those 2 minutes of the show. And it's kind of amazing because he kind of went from being a companion to sort of a Time Lord.
Yeah. I know.
So yeah, I like it.
Yes, you're positive. I'm excited to see Hawkgirl. She didn't speak in the trailer, but she's there. It was.
So what do you? Are they going to stick to that mythology?
I mean, Hawkgirl in the comics, Hawkman and Hawkgirl are complicated. Like they've retconned their origins a million times. So he makes the reference about past lives complex, which makes it sound like there's skepticism there.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to play with that. I think it's going to be like what her origin is a little murky at first before we get what the definitive Arrowverse version of it is, because there's a lot you can, unlike a lot of comic book characters, and like they better stick to the comic book origin. Well, with her, there's many ways to go on that.
Yeah, and they're always kind of playing with them a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, they kind of usually circle back to it.
Yeah.
Eventually.
We still don't know, though, again, by the time a lot of people see this, the Arrow finale will vary, because we still don't know why Robbie Amell is not in this show.
You mean the Flash?
The Flash finale. We still don't know why Robbie Amell's not in the show, and it's still kind of weird. Yeah.
But they do kind of mention it, because he says, I'm one half of a superhero.
Yeah.
We're not really a team, and they've said that an explanation is coming.
Yeah.
Is it that Robbie Amell signed some other contract? I don't know, but
he's doing a movie right now, but that shouldn't stop him from doing. I don't know. It's strange. We're curious about that one. Yeah, but yeah, I'm optimistic. I mean, it's a very fun looking show. Again, knowing that this was just shot for the trailer, and I'm curious how much of this material at all, much less these scenes, will we get. I think we're gonna get new versions of similar scenes, basically. Yeah,
I think so too.
Yeah.
Again, we better.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we will have a scene. Like the scene, it's so amazing because it's so this universe. To have Oliver and Barry like kind of like, hey, we're going to tell you what you guys are now, like very overtly on a rooftop. It always has to be on a rooftop.
Rooftops,
so we said that probably the scene that we will definitely get is them on a rooftop.
Yeah.
There will be
rooftop scenes, yes. Let's shift over to something where I have an advantage because you have not seen any footage from, which is Heroes Reborn.
Oh, how did it look?
It looked really good.
Really?
I have to say. So this was,
season 1 Heroes good?
It looked cool to me. So it was weird because, not weird, but it once in a while there's an outlier trailer that they don't release online afterwards, usually mid-season stuff. But this time Heroes Reborn, it's going to be on in the fall, but they only showed it at the upfront. They have not released it. And now that we're a week out, I feel like it might be Comic-Con. It might be like I think they're going to have a big Heroes presence at Comic-Con.
I hope so. I got to say that this is another one where I'm very cautiously optimistic because I loved that first season. I mean, we all did.
Yeah.
That first season of Heroes. And if they can recapture that even a little bit, hopefully a lot.
I think I'm looking forward to the fact that it is focused, that it's like 13 episodes and a specific story being told. So spoilers for the trailer follow, I guess. I did a big write-up on it on the site. But yes, one of the biggest reveals in the trailer was that Zachary Levi is the bad guy, and I'm excited by that. I think that's really cool, playing against type.
Very much.
Like he's basically just going out
and against reality. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah. And like his sort of intro in the trailer is him sitting in a sort of support group that either must be people with powers or other people who, basically we get the idea from the trailer that look, Heroes always borrowed from X-Men. And so the idea in Heroes Reborn seems to be that because the end of season 4, the final season of Heroes, was the world finding out these people existed, it didn't go well. And it's gone, and we're going into sort of Days of Future Past territory where they've all been killed or hunted or gone on the run. And we get glimpses of like, the original characters, and it's like dead, wanted, like very Days of Future Past, sort of what happened to them. And then we see this group where Zachary Levi is sitting, talking about the people with powers, and then he stands up, him and the girl next to him take out guns, and they shoot and kill everyone in the circle. So you get the idea that he just killed a group of people with powers or people who supported people with powers.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was cool. Like it was, there's one moment that's super cheesy and yet is awesome, which is that Noah Bennett, HRG, is now, I'm just a simple paper salesman. And there's a guy who comes to him, is like, you have to help these people and embrace who you are. And he's given a manila envelope, and he opens it. And I should say he does not have glasses on. He opens the envelope and the glasses are inside. So it's like his superhero costume.
Yeah,
like he will,
putting it back on.
Right.
That's kind of awesome.
Yeah. So
I like the sound of it.
I'm hopeful, yeah. And this was a big deal to me because I don't know about you guys. The more Heroes went on, the more annoying Hero the character got to me. Loved him at first. But then they started to go so far down the well of he's adorable and childlike. And but they had that glimpse of future Hero.
Kind of a badass.
And in the trailer, the only time we see him, he looks like future Hero. Okay. So I was like, oh my God, are they gonna let Masaoka just play that?
Because
of what this is? So
that'd be great.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. So that's
I don't know. I'm on board.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because
do you remember when that was like the only thing on TV even like that? That it was crazy that it existed.
It was great. I mean, Heroes. I actually kind of really tie into my time at IGN because it was when I started IGN. Lost was our biggest show, but Heroes was the first show to launch when I was at IGN to be like the big oh my God, this is for our audience and everyone's freaking out, and both our readers and us love it. We were so excited by it, and we covered the hell out of it, and then it. Yeah.
One day you have to just talk about the evolution of your time here when it was like 1 or 2 shows and looking for stuff to cover into like us were like.
Yeah, there's a lot. And a brief thing I want to say about Heroes, I don't know if rant is the right word, but every time we write about Heroes, including with this new stuff, there will be a sect of people who say, oh, the writer's strike ruined Heroes, or it would have been it would have still been awesome if it weren't for the writer's strike. It's not true, guys. The writer's strike meant that, they stopped production and they came back the next fall, but season 2 was already way shaky. And in fact, Heroes, because they decided with season 2 to go to the volumes thing where they were going to have 2 or 3 stories a year. So we got all of volume 2, I guess. Better than a lot of shows, it didn't just cut off. They got to tell that story. And I don't understand why people think that if, I don't know, they were already having problems with the writing, and so they got a few months off and came back, and then the writing got worse. So I don't know why people think that the writer's strike is an excuse for where that show went.
I don't know. I mean, thoughts? Why do you think? I really don't know, because actually, I was just in my mind going over the couple of projects that were super benefited by having extra time.
Yeah.
Because of the writer's strike.
Yeah. But even the shows that like Chuck or Pushing Daisies, there was a lot of shows that got their first seasons cut short because of the writer's strike, and they came back and they were as good or not better than ever.
Right, because they had even I think I mean, I really think that I was just going through the whole list in my mind that I was like, there were actually a lot of things that benefited from taking a break and not having to do all of those episodes.
Yeah, and some, of course, yes, it's very true. You could make the argument it did kill momentum, like Pushing Daisies. Who knows? It was so weird. Would it ever have a bigger audience? But it couldn't have helped that it was then suddenly gone. Yeah. But people seem to be acting like the quality of Heroes was hurt by the writer's strike, which I don't think makes sense.
An audience could be lost by that, yes. Yeah. But the quality of the writing is not going to suffer.
Yeah. Season 3 was their worst season. So yeah. That's all I want to say, people. Is writer's strike. It had its issues, but it didn't make Heroes bad. Let's talk for a moment about the Muppets.
Right? I will talk for so many moments about the Muppets.
Multiple moments for Muppets?
All of the moments for Muppets.
Thoughts on the trailer?
I loved it.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought it was such a smart direction to go in. You know, and I loved how meta it got, because I think, and the Muppets are often very meta.
Very,
you know?
very.
I mean,
that's always been an element.
That's always been, that's like super in their tradition. So they're just being in a meta in a way that makes sense now.
Yep.
You know, and they're adapting to the current audience, but still being their little Muppety selves.
Yes.
And I want to play, like, you've interviewed Kermit and Piggy, right?
I have interviewed Kermit and Piggy. Very difficult. Very difficult. No, they were good.
Was it who was doing the voices that day?
I mean, it's the people who've been doing it for years now. Yeah.
I interviewed.
What do you mean doing the voices? It was Kermit and Piggy.
It was Kermit and Piggy. I'm sorry, forgive me. I interviewed Kermit, and it was so magical. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so magical.
It's pretty great.
It, but I don't care.
And that's another one where they haven't done the full pilot, but they did like a longer presentation. But yeah, I think it looks really funny. I really like the direction they're taking with it. It's being produced by Bill Prady, who's the co-creator of Big Bang Theory, which I know is another show with our audience can be kind of polarizing. But I actually was fascinated to find, I didn't know he had this huge history with Henson and the Muppets, and one of his first jobs was working for Henson, and he wrote the Muppet Vision show that's at the Disney parks.
Really?
That, that debuted in like 1990 or whatever.
Wow.
Yeah, and so he's actually been trying to make this show happen for like 10, 15, but well before Big Bang Theory, he had an early kernel of what this show would be.
Of wanting to do the Muppets.
Yeah.
I am curious, the movies weren't as successful as I think that many would have hoped.
I think the first, it wasn't giant. It was success. Giant. I think it was the fact that the second one was way less than, that hurt.
Even the first one wasn't a giant hit.
No, it wasn't giant,
So what do you think the Muppets on TV will do?
It's really hard to say, right? It's like, because there's such affection for them. Like, there really is affection for the characters, but they're not like the biggest characters. So I don't know. And it's on ABC, which is not, they're kind of in the middle ground right now, ratings-wise. They have some major problems. They have some major triumphs with like the Shonda Rhimes stuff. So I don't know. It's really hard to say. It's going to air with Fresh Off the Boat.
Yeah.
There's nothing that you compare with the Muppets where you're like perfect, because there's only one Muppets. It'll lead into there'll be Muppets Fresh Off the Boat, and then the Shield/Agent Carter thing.
It's interesting because I feel like it has the potential to hit those four quadrants, but legitimately. But then it also has the potential to be something that people are like, I don't know what that would be, so I'm not going to watch it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that I understand this thing, so I'm not going to engage with it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my concern with it.
It is a concern, and there'll always be the people that are like, oh, well, although it's weird to think that people would still be like, Muppets, that's for kids, when it's always been for all audiences.
Yeah. The Muppet Show is not just for kids.
No. It always had a smart level working for everyone, and they have described this new version as more adult, which has made some people be like, "What? It's not for kids? It is for kids too." It's just even more than the original. I think they're writing with that, which happens with the better animated shows now and stuff, where you can tell. Like I've talked about how Matt Fowler always will mention when he's so grateful for not horrible kids shows that it clearly have writers that are thinking about the parents watching.
Yeah.
Even Sesame Street, the fact that we get Game of Thrones parody on Sesame Street.
God. Well, Sesame Street is a whole other level of amazing.
Yeah.
Legitimately.
Oh yeah. But Sesame Street is obviously aimed at a younger audience, the Muppet Show, but they still keep in mind that adults are going to see it because adults are in the room when their kids are watching.
But I guess what I mean about Sesame Street is like Sesame Street is able to tackle like really big topics in a way, for kids. I think like Muppets is far more about entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
And Sesame Street is far more about education. They're both amazing.
Yeah.
But I've seen some of those Sesame Street breakouts where you're like, well, they're talking about one of their dads in jail. Like,
right.
That's intense.
Right.
Like,
if Muppets go to jail, they're just gonna have fun with it.
they're gonna have a great time.
And they did,
as we've seen.
Yeah. Freaking Constantine.
Such a bleep.
Yes. So I'm very hopeful. I'm very excited to have Muppets back. Let's also mention, I just kind of mentioned the show in passing, how freaking psyched I am that Agent Carter got renewed, which was like a little bit of a surprise at the end there.
It was a surprise for me. I mean, I loved Agent Carter and I wanted it to get renewed, but it just didn't seem to connect with audiences at all. And I'm not sure if it was the period there. I don't know. But I'm glad that it's getting a second chance. I really am. Yeah,
it was interesting because we got more and more, into the mind frame of assuming it would be canceled because of the Shield spinoff and then the John Ridley show. And it's like, there's not that much space on ABC for all this stuff because none of it's a huge enough hit. And then I started to hear like, oh, but the buzz is good, but I still thought, it's not going to come back. I don't know. I didn't want to get my hopes up. Yeah. So I was really happy to hear that it is coming back. I think for the time being, even though I do like Bobby and Hunter on S.H.I.E.L.D., it's the right move to not do that spinoff right now.
That spinoff, to be honest, just did not make a ton of sense to me. I like those characters too, but I like them as a part of that team.
And because S.H.I.E.L.D's not a huge hit, it seems strange to be like, let's do another contemporary spy show with characters from that show.
Very similar, and like, how is this distinct? I still really want to see the Inhumans. I know I'm asking for things that aren't going to happen. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I do.
And
I don't think I will.
I don't think you will either. But I am super psyched about Agent Carter. All we know is that it's set in LA this season. Pointedly, they've only announced Haley Atwell is returning, but there's no way, like, they're not doing the show without Jarvis, right? Like, I think there's no way they're doing it. I don't think there's any way they're not, but I don't think everyone's going to come back. Yeah. So, and there's probably...
Because they can't keep reliving the same... I mean, technically speaking... Okay, let's talk about the chronology here.
Yeah.
Because technically speaking, wouldn't the Marvel one-shot have happened... Clear that up for us.
The one-shot may be the first time, may become the first time they kind of have to say that didn't happen. They've already talked about that, and they talked about with season 1 how the show could be aiming towards the one-shot, but the longer the show goes on, the less they could do that.
They can't do
and there's at a certain point they'd have to just say, you know what? And also just, yes, it's true they even used parts of the one-shot in the montage at the beginning of season 1, but you could still be like, that's a little ethereal. Yeah. But at a certain point, I think people have to kind of, I know it's hard because everyone loves how the continuity all ties together. That one-shot, you might have to kind of be like, that was an idea, you know? That was more of it was a standalone thing, and it might not really work with what they're doing
I don't think it does.
I don't think so either.
But I think also you probably can't replay the same sort of inter-office dynamics that you had last season. I think you have to have her. I mean, she's still a woman who's living in that time period, so that's reality. But I think that you move away from hitting those beats quite so much, and you just kind of have her maybe off on a mission.
I think so too.
Several episodes.
It sounds highly likely that they might jump to like the early 50s. They could have said the atomic age, was mentioned in the description, and they'd already inferred they might do that. Might jump like it won't be like a few months later. It might be a few years later. Yeah. So and everyone has already mentioned like, hey, Los Angeles. Angie could have moved there because of her acting career and whatnot, and that's how you bring Lindsay Fonseca back. So I love the show, and I love Agent Carter, like Peggy Carter. So I'm just like, oh, we're getting more of that.
No, I'm excited. I think it's good.
It is good. It's very good. So yay for Peggy. Let's mention a few of the notable cancellations and their weird future. Because we live in a very different time now from a few years ago when it comes to cancellations.
Because it's like in comics, dead does not always mean dead.
Yeah. And a few years ago, because yes, there were always the odd exception, right? Once in a while, something would be canceled and then it would be saved, whether it be by another network picking it up. And this goes back to like even early 80s and stuff when some Long in the Tooth sitcoms, like Different Strokes, were canceled, and then another network was like, oh, we can squeak 1 or 2 more years out of that. Then you got something like Jericho, canceled. There is a huge fan outcry, and they do bring it back, for one short season that didn't work. But I would always, especially with our readers, be like, do not get your hopes up. You have to understand how rare this is. And it's still rare, but it's way less rare now.
Yeah, it happens more, for sure, because it can be picked up. It can be saved by an online.
A lot of the streaming services especially,
Netflix, Amazon, Yahoo now, obviously, with Community.
Yeah, there's suddenly all these different ways,
It is an overwhelming world of television, but a spacious one.
It is a spacious one, but then it still, I think, does give people maybe overly excited about the possibilities when most shows will not be saved. So let's talk about the fact that Mindy Project, The Following, and Constantine were all canceled. And the most shocking of those 3, by the way, was Mindy Project.
Yeah.
Which, even though it was not a big ratings hit, had been believed that they'd worked out the financials enough, even though it was owned by NBC Universal, so Fox didn't make money on owning it, but they'd worked it out where NBC Universal was giving it to them cheap enough and this and that. They'd probably bring it back. So that was the biggest, whoa, really, that got canceled. But we immediately heard that Hulu was in talks.
Yeah.
And then the following Constantine got canceled, and we also heard that Warner Brothers is shopping those. And now Mindy Project's been saved. It is back. It's been canceled and resurrected.
But that seemed to me like the one that was the most obvious pick to actually get saved.
And that's I totally agree. And it's like, and I know it's hard for, if you're a big fan of Constantine, like when we put up the article about the Mindy Project, people are like, why would they save that and not Constantine?
Because this is why.
Yeah.
I mean, when folks are at home and they're scrolling through Hulu or any other online anything, you sort of just want to veg out and watch something, you're much more likely to tune in to a half-hour comedy of anything. Any just light and breezy half-hour comedy that doesn't demand too much of you than a supernatural guy haunted by demons and damned to hell show. We love it too. We love that stuff too. But it's just true. It just has a broader appeal.
Yeah.
It's easier to watch. It's easier to make sense of for advertisers. It's just easier to know what to do with.
And I know some people I think that by the time Mindy Project got canceled, you could say, well, Constantine was averaging like slightly higher, but there's so many other factors. Mindy Project had 3 full seasons, so like 66, maybe even a little more, but
which they can have
of shows, already on Hulu, where it did very well for them.
Right.
And that's a huge factor. Was Hulu saying this show performs very well for us on Hulu?
On Hulu, yeah, exactly. And it's just more likely to pick up because that's another show that I could go. I don't actually watch the Mindy Project. Maybe it's great. I don't know. But
it's funny.
But the point is, I could probably go tune into season 4 right now, and within about 5 minutes, kind of get it.
Yeah.
And be fine to keep going forward. Or if I really love it, now I got everything, those other 3 seasons, go back and watch that on Hulu.
Yeah.
It's just like Constantine, you have to go back to the beginning if you're going to kind of take part.
And it's more expensive.
It's got effects.
That's a huge, so that's the catch-22 is like, you could be like, oh, but there wouldn't be that much to catch up on. Well, that's the other problem for anyone like a Hulu. There's only one 13-episode season, so there's not a library of this show. Yeah. It's an hour-long show with a lot of effects, way more expensive than something like the Mindy Project, which is like fixed comedy sets. Yeah.
Point the camera and shoot at the people doing the wacky stuff.
Yeah, and so it's just there's way more of a financial investment and a rolling the dice that this show, which will be way more serialized and whatnot, even though it mixed in procedural elements of like the case of the week. It's just there's way more risk involved in let's order season 2 of Constantine versus let's order season 4 of the Mindy Project. Yeah.
And again, none of this is to say like this is what we want to have happen. Like I think it'd be great if Constantine was saved.
Right.
That's right up my alley. You know? But
when people go, why isn't it? Well, that's why. And whatever you think of Mindy Project, which some people were like totally hating on. I like Mindy Project, but why would they save that and not Constantine? There are absolute financial reasons that they save one and not the other, and it's just realistic. It's show business, people. That's a brand new statement no one's ever made that you can use. And the following has more of a chance than Constantine, but I still think it's a long shot because Kevin Bacon ain't cheap.
Yeah.
Bacon ain't cheap.
That bacon's expensive.
Yeah.
Now bacon makes everything taste better. It's true.
Right.
It's really true. Bacon is delicious.
Bacon is delicious.
But I think it's unlikely.
And again, network shows budgets are usually the highest of any. With Netflix has thrown a lot of money at some shows, but except for like HBO and Netflix, your basic cable show, like a show on A&E or Sci-Fi, costs less than a network show. So once you get into something like The Following, it's like, okay, well, it has an audience, not as big as it could have been. Kevin Bacon, we can sell him, but how much does the show cost? And they're like, oh, we can't afford that. Well, what if you cut the budget of The Following? At what point does it look like a cheap version of The Following?
Right.
So there's just all these
And at what point does he just then not to want to do it anymore?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because he always had the special deal, like that reason that show didn't do full 22, which we agree is better for serialized drama, although The Following wasn't very good. But he never would commit to that. And same with Viola Davis on How to Get Away with Murder.
Have you kept watching it?
How to Get Away with Murder? The Following.
The Following.
No, I stopped like halfway through season 2.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Let's mention, though, talking about movie stars and TV and the back and forth of that.
Sure, it's what we're paid to do.
That's what we're paid to do. Bradley Cooper announced as a recurring on Limitless, the TV show.
I know. That was like, that's so both surprised and didn't surprise me. Hi, I'm articulate. Yeah, because, okay, here's the deal. He obviously loves this movie, and I'm not sure why.
Okay.
You know?
I haven't seen the movie. That's my big thing.
Of all of the Bradley Cooper movies that he could be like, this is my baby. I'm going to back this baby and like because I'll tell you the truth, and this is what's interesting to me, is that the show actually looks more engaging to me and entertaining than the movie. Let me explain.
I thought the trailer looked good, by the way, too.
I thought it did, too.
Yeah.
And I actually, and forgive me, I can't remember his name right now. What is the actor's name?
I forget as well.
Oh gosh, we're terrible people. He was on
Johnny Limitless.
Johnny Limitless.
Yeah.
He was also on Greek, and he was on this very short-lived Love in Manhattan Love Story comedy that was on this season that I enjoyed. I caught it on Hulu. Well, I was sick one day. But,
Hulu is not a sponsor of this podcast.
No, it's not. So Limitless, the movie, and I won't go down too far this rabbit hole, but it's like kind of an okay action movie, but it has a base premise that I have a really big issue with, which is this idea, and it's used again and again and again, that we only use X percentage of our brain, and if we were to have full access, 100% to our brain, we would have superpowers. And it's like
the possibilities would be limitless.
We've talked about this as it comes up again. Lucy did the same thing. And it's a false premise. It's inaccurate. It's scientifically inaccurate. It doesn't work, and it just kind of drives me nuts. But the other thing that comes up too is that as people become smarter, often in these stories, they also become more and more evil and self-serving. Which Lucy actually didn't do this, which I liked. And I talked to Scarlett Johansson. And I was saying that this was one of the aspects of Lucy that I really liked. In my opinion and my hope is that if people were truly to become exponentially smarter, they would also become exponentially more wise.
What an optimistic viewpoint, Rob.
Less self-serving and more interested in the benefit of the whole, because that they would see that they were a part of the whole. I'm sorry, I just totally did that. But I have a problem with that movie because I think it's got a really bad premise. Having said that, I really liked the trailer for the TV show.
The trailer looked good.
And it looked like a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. And Cooper's
like a fun spy kind of, 24 type vibe.
Again, it's CBS. It's going to be very procedural. But yeah, Cooper, we knew was an executive producer on it. But yeah, at first, the initial announcements of the show did not make it clear it would be a sequel to the movie. And then it turns out Cooper's in it.
Not only is it a sequel to the movie, but he's like, God, what is he doing? He's got kind of like a legion. Like, are there more people that he's feeding it to?
Right.
Slowly doling out. I forget the pill's name. Do you remember what it is? But it's basically this pill that makes you exponentially smarter. But then it's only for a short period of time. You gotta take more. And then does he send them out on missions and then deprive them of it?
Right.
What's happening?
I don't know. You have to tune in to find out.
I do like Bradley Cooper a lot.
I like Bradley Cooper too, and then like the fact that he's going to be recurring on the show. And again, I think realistically, if this has 22 episodes, he might be in 4 episodes.
I don't think he'll be there a lot.
But I think that they are going to have him be this presence in the background. This is exactly what CBS was going to do with Beverly Hills Cop if they'd picked that up to series with Eddie Murphy. He was going to appear in the pilot.
And he was going to take a pill.
And he's going to take a pill and be limitless. And then he would pop up throughout the season here and there. So yeah, it was just kind of like a surprise. Like, oh, okay, because we knew Minority Report was like a sequel series, but then it turned out Limitless was swell. So
yeah, well, I think, and two, the one thing in the pilot that I really did appreciate was that it wasn't just like I have superpowers for no reason. They took the time to explain, what if you knew exactly how much you weighed and how far you could jump and hold it? Like, what if you really knew that before you did it? Then you could actually do it. And I'm like, okay, he's calculating things.
Right, so he's not like he has super strength,
it's just
but
he can do the math.
Can figure out what he would need to do to make this move work.
It's like those MIT people that like kill at poker.
Yeah.
Because they can do the math.
There you go. Like that movie. 21.
Like that movie, 21. Okay, so I'm sorry about my rant about how people should be wise while they're
smarter and
kinder
and gooder, because that's a word.
More good. But it's true.
Yeah. So I'm hopeful for Limitless. Let me mention quickly a show that you do not watch, even though you should. Person of Interest.
I don't watch that show.
Awesome freaking show.
What do you want me to do, Eric? I watch so much TV.
I want you to watch 88 episodes of Person of Interest. It was interesting because that show seemed like a lock to come back, and then suddenly
You watched Doctor Who first.
I tried. I didn't get into it. Yeah, sorry. I liked it. It just didn't grab me.
And that's why we're not getting a Doctor Who podcast.
Might revisit it at some point, but I don't know. Anyway, Person of Interest. It's a great show, and it seemed like it was coming back. But then there started to be nervousness around it, even though I had to keep telling people, like on Twitter, they go like, why hasn't Person of Interest been renewed? I was like, they haven't renewed NCIS either. They hadn't renewed any of their returning as a not freshman dramas until a few days before when they renewed them all at once. So it wasn't like Person of Interest was being singled out. They just hadn't renewed anything. But then it did get singled out because when they renewed everything, including it was the only one that didn't get a full season, a full 22 episodes. And that is when we get into this damn thing that's becoming more and more important about who owns the show. Because now Person of Interest, I believe, certainly with the returning shows, is the only non-CBS produced one. It's Warner Brothers. And suddenly it's like, oh, who do we have more investment in this show?
Which is a big question.
It's a big question, yeah. So all I'm going to say about that is that there's a lot of nervousness. This might be the last season, and I directly asked Nina Tassler about this, and her answer was, we're having those conversations with Jonathan Nolan right now and Greg Plagueman. I'll just say this. I'm totally okay with season 5 being the end. The show's gotten super dense and serialized, and I think shows that super dense and serialized 5 years is a great run.
Yeah.
I just want them to know before they start making it. I don't want them to find out halfway through, and I want them to have to course correct because, this will be the last season. Just tell them, make that decision this summer before they start filming.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in this day and age, I think that the audience I think that a former television audience was more used to things just kind of ending.
Yeah.
But now they're like, wrap it up. We want a conclusion to this story, particularly the way stories are told now on television, and I think we deserve it.
Yeah.
And even though I don't watch this show, but you don't watch Doctor Who, and that's a big problem.
Right.
I think that the Person of Interest fans deserve that.
They do, and especially that show because it's an unusual show on CBS for being as serialized it is, It would be very odd to not have proper closure. And that will lead me to one other thing we should mention, which is, so CBS has all these huge procedurals that make them all this money, and then those shows just freaking end, right? So Without a Trace and CSI Miami and CSI New York, they just weren't renewed. And that's always so bizarre to me that you could, I know the shows are super standalone procedural, that's the entire reason for their existence. It still seems odd to me that there was an episode that was just another episode and it turned out to be the final one.
Yeah.
If these shows are on for years. So it was interesting to see them doing right in their way by CSI, the original CSI.
Yes.
With their decision to do a TV movie.
All shows to do it right by.
I mean, you have to think.
Procedural.
It's a procedural, but I'm just saying, but that show has made them so much
money.
Yeah, so much
I
money.
know. It's really, let's guesstimate.
It's billions.
It's got to be, right?
Yeah.
It's literally billions of dollars.
Because we're talking 15 years of that, the 2 spinoffs I just mentioned, the current spinoff, which is struggling.
International.
Yeah, international, giant.
Huge.
Yeah. And so it did, as someone who doesn't care at all about CSI, I still thought that's nice that they're going to do a TV movie wrap-up. They're not going to do a final season, a truncated season. They're just like, let's do one TV movie where they got William Pearson and Mark Helberger to come back for. So just watching from the side, I was like, okay, all those people invested all that time. Even if those people liked that there was no continuing story, I think they'd still like some acknowledgement within the show that this is the end.
This is the end for sure. I'm still hurt about Sarah Connor Chronicles, so whatever. That's
right. One day we won't get anything. But
one day it will never happen.
It will never happen. Want to mention quickly Undateable, what they're doing with that show, because that's pretty interesting. First of all, Undateable.
I haven't watched it yet.
I watched the pilot and it was but I also was very of the mind of, I bet this becomes really funny because it's Bill Lawrence and most of the shows are funny.
Yeah.
And because I kind of knew this was a show that, like Cougar Town, another Bill Lawrence show, was immediately pushing against its title.
Yeah.
And being like,
but he has to stop doing that.
Stop doing that. Yeah.
Because it doesn't work when you do that.
Yeah.
The audience hears the title and they think that's what they're getting.
Right.
Either they don't want that, or then they're not getting the thing they thought they were going to get.
Yeah.
So let's stop being ironic in our titles, Bill.
Right. So like Cougar Town, Undateable, from what I've heard people say, it just became a funny show about a group of friends, which is what most sitcoms are.
Which is what it exactly looked like. There was nothing in it. Like, first of all, I guess there was a piece of me too when I saw all of the promo materials for that show. I was like, none of you are undateable.
Right.
You're all
You're totally
highly
dateable.
dateable.
Right.
Like,
I reject your premise.
I reject your premise wholeheartedly. And if you do not know that you are dateable, well, that is your problem, sir.
Right. But they did that live episode, and then like 4 days later, the show got renewed, and for a season, they're now going to do every episode live. Yeah. And I think it is fun, like as far as something different, which is to say something different being something that people in the 50s were very used to, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's the way there was. Not just in the 50s, though. I think that there were sitcoms there were still live tapings of sitcoms through the 70s.
Well, no, but they weren't being broadcast live.
They weren't being broadcast live.
But they still, I mean, it was still the live.
And there were the two 30 Rocks.
That's been the one-offs, but Rock. I thought you were going to say it actually because you said the word Rock. Yeah, do you remember that sitcom? So Rock was that family sitcom in the 90s, and they did a live season. Every episode was live. Yeah.
No, 30 Rock did 2 that aired live on the East Coast. Obviously.
And a lot of shows have done it like in that, like, let's do it as a special one-off. ER did it. Yeah. ER did the live episode. And it's always an interesting experiment, and it's kind of weird because everything.
Do you think it can work for a whole season?
I think it can, even though they have to be careful because, like, the night they did it for this past season of Undateable, they brought in a bunch of guest stars and kind of gimmicked it up. And Bill Lawrence, if you don't follow Bill Lawrence on Twitter, you should. He's very fun to follow because he's very stream of consciousness, and he'll talk about the process and what's happening and getting Undateable renewed. And like, he was just like free-forming. The weekend it got renewed, he's like, you know, and yeah, we'll have some guests sometimes. We know we can't rely on that, but we'd like to be more topical, and maybe we can do this. And he was just throwing out, because it just got renewed. They hadn't sat down yet to talk about it. Yeah. So he was basically on Twitter, everything going through his mind about how this might work. Yeah. But I also want to mention, and this is a interesting but sad fact for NBC. Undateable was the first comedy since Community to get a season 3 on NBC. Oh, NBC. Yeah.
The once
mighty comedy. Yeah, especially in the comedy realm.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They were the absolute bastion for comedy on television at one point for a long period of time.
Yeah. It's struggle, and if you look at their schedule, they only are programming an hour of comedy on Fridays in the fall. It
kind of makes me kind of sad.
It is, right?
I feel like the peacock is like in the ICU, just
it needs some help.
Begging for
the colors
life.
are faded a little bit.
It's all like pale and a little bit albino.
Right. The peacock has seen some better days.
Have you seen The Dark Crystal?
Yes.
Yeah, you know when they take the essence?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's happening to the peacock.
Yes. But hopefully, you know,
we're hopeful for you, NBC.
I love Bill Lawrence. I wish Undateable live well. It's a fun experiment. It helps them stand out, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, NBC's got some comedy work to do.
Do you have reader email? I feel like I see a reader email.
I have one, but I'm going to hold off. I'm going to tell you why after, because next week it might be better to answer this other one. But I don't want to not read any reader email, but this is a total cheat because it's reader email. We got it. It was sent to channelsurfing@IGN.com, but it was sent from Mark Nix, head of the database at IGN.
It's kind of a cheat, but let's do it.
All right. And all he writes is in all caps, "It was Mary Kate." And then he writes in normal, Mary Kate Olsen was the one in the thing. She was the her, Mary Kate, ... in Weeds. To clarify.
Okay.
Which Olsen twin?
So we're basically doing a video retraction of whatever. When we were talking about the Olsens last week, right?
Well, a few weeks ago, yes. Okay. And which Olsen was on Weeds? And then he writes, she also made out with Ben Kingsley in The Whackness. So Mark Nix,
big
Mary Kate Olsen,
fountain of information,
hates Ashley.
Apparently,
that's my inference here.
Apparently, has a wall of
Mary
Kate love, but then also Ashley's used as target practice. And
oh man,
poor Ashley.
She knows what she did. She wronged him. That being said, you should send us reader email, and Julian, I'll even tease.
He ignores it like nobody else. You should
totally
definitely send it.
Julianne, I will read your email in the next one. So channelsurfing@ign.com, but you can also tweet us.
I'm at Roth Cornett. I'm going to take this moment to leave you with this $7 million a year to get on the phone. But in reality, I'm going to take this moment because I kind of jokingly referenced it before. We are actually very lucky people. Like, seriously. We are very lucky people. We get to watch TV and talk about it. That's awesome. Thank you for joining us today.
We don't get paid $7 million, but...
I'm trying to be the change I want to see in the world here.
All right. You want to be limitless.
I'm practicing the limitless that I see. Me and ScarJo are on the same page about what that looks like.
Roth Cornett on Twitter, Eric IGN on Twitter. Do send us emails as well, channelsurfing@ign.com. That is it for now. Shakma.
Shakma.